G'day guys and welcome to another Mark Makes video. Today I'm going to be making a wine barrel coffee table. This one's going to have a hinging lid and I'm also going to line the lid with a sheet of acrylic that's going to act as a little bit of a window to what's going on inside the barrel. This box in the background is something I've ordered online and the contents of that is what's going inside the barrel. I'll leave that as a little bit of a surprise for the end, so stick around to see what that's all about. Let's get straight into it. So the first step for this project is going to be grabbing the barrel and building a framework around the top outside edge. I have some pieces of Tasmanian oak that's 65mm wide and 12mm thick, so I'll cut some 45 joins and line the outside there. They're going to be glued on and also use my pin gun just to fix them in place while it's drying. I have a few little gaps that will need puttying and also a little bit of sanding to finish it off. It's now time to flip the barrel and sand it. So I'm going to be removing 2 of the straps at a time to allow decent access rather than having to try and sand around them. I have a sanding disc on a grinder just to get the bulk of the barrel smooth first, then finishing it off with my orbitable sander. Once that's done, I put the straps back and move on to the next section. This barrel is the other half of a project which I've done previously. Cutting the barrel in half was an instructional video on how to do that, and then I've also made another video where I made a planter box with a wheelbarrow frame and the other half. So if you want to check either of those videos out, I'll leave them as links in the description below. I also need to sand both ends. There's a little bit of crust and residue from the inside of the barrel, so I'm just sanding that smooth and giving it a nice finish. And that's all the sanding done for this barrel. You might also have noticed something's a little bit different in the background here. If you've seen other previous videos, you'll notice I used to have a workbench here, but I've cleared all that out to make room for this lathe and the bandsaw, which someone generously gave me. It was an opportunity too good to miss, so I had to compromise back to one workbench now, but this allowed me this room and I think some really cool projects in the pipeline with these tools. And so now the next step of this project, I'm going to build some legs for the barrel before getting started on the lid. I have these templates left over from the wheelbarrow projects. That's the one I mentioned earlier. So that's really going to help to get the right curve of the barrel for these legs. So I'm going to use pine for the legs of this barrel. It's going to be a little bit lighter and I am conscious of how heavy it's going to get, and also a lot cheaper than using Tassie oak for everything. Because of the curve of the barrel, these legs are slightly angling outward. I've intentionally done that, and now I'm going to cut the bottom of the legs so they sit directly on the floor. The barrel is nicely sitting off the ground and those feet look pretty good, I think. Okay, so with the feet done, it's now time to work on the lid. I have 4 of these pine slats. I need to build a framework out of them that sits on top of the current frame. And on top of that, I have these 2 pieces of cladding. The reason I got them is because they're tongue and groove, and that happens to be exactly the right size for my sheet of acrylic. The thickness is about 4mm, and so it slides nicely into this cladding. So it's a bit wider than I need, but I'll just cut them down, and once they're fixed together, the total thickness of the lid should be about 20mm. There is still 2 films of plastic keeping a sheet of acrylic from getting scratched, so that's why it's kind of cloudy at the moment. But once all the work's done, I can peel those sheets back and it should be nice and clear. So that's all the timber cut. So now the next step is going to be attaching it all together. I'm going to glue it and chuck a few pins just to hold it in place and slide that sheet of acrylic in. Alright, that's the lid all put together, and I've also puttied the corners and they've had a chance to dry. And so the next step for that is going to be sanding it, making sure it's all smooth and the corners are looking nice, and then we can look at hinging it. I've purchased this full-length hinge here and cut it down to the size of the framework which sits on top of the barrel. So I'll just attach that in place. Later on I might take the lid off for varnishing, but for now I'll just put it in place so we can continue with the build. And then from there I've got a couple of little accessories which I'll put on as well. Well, I think we're hinging on success now. The lid is complete. The full-length hinge really works well with this, I think, and makes it nice and strong. And now it's time to start painting and varnishing. I'm using Dulux Satin Black for the metal straps on the barrel. It's a fast-drying spray paint. I've used it quite a lot, and it's also handy that it dries so fast as well. For the lid and the top of the barrel and also inside the barrel, I'm using a marine-grade exterior satin varnish. This is a hard wearing, very durable varnish, and again I've used it on previous projects as well, particularly ones that go outside. I'm not going to do the outside of the barrel with this stuff. It does change the timber to a darker colour, which is what I'm wanting with the pine, but I don't want to make the barrel itself any darker. So for that I'm using this Benchtop Clear. It's a water-based satin and I've used that on my wine barrel whiskey cabinet conversion video. That was one of my first videos I've ever done, and I've still got a little bit left over. It gives it a really nice finish and brings out the grain of the timber as well. Everything is dry. I ended up doing several coats on each piece. Now is the fun part, which is going to be putting everything together, and very shortly we'll be seeing what is inside the cardboard box, which I showed at the start of the video. And there we have it, everything is assembled. I've also added these clear adhesive stickers that should stop the slamming and also create an even gap along the whole lid. And now for the part we've all been waiting for. What is inside this cardboard box? This was an idea that I actually had before I started the project. I wasn't sure what it was called, so I did a bit of searching on Google and found what I was after. It's called wood wool. So let's open the box and have a look. It's pretty much just big wood shavings, nice long ones. And I thought it would look really cool inside this barrel, and then I can add some wine bottles sort of nesting in it. So we'll go ahead and put some of that in. And there we have it. Almost exactly as I imagined it when I was first thinking up the project. So now it's time to move it inside, arrange it into the lounge. We'll add some wine bottles to it, and that'll be project complete. Alrighty guys, that brings us to the end of the wine barrel coffee table project. Just one piece of advice if you're planning to build one yourself. The barrel itself was not actually square, so when I was doing the 45 corners for the piece of acrylic window there, I ended up having to scribe it to fit the barrel. If I'd done square cuts, it wouldn't have fit quite right, so just keep that one in mind if you're planning to build one yourself. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in guys. I appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video, and I'll catch you on the next one.